Welcome to Cross Platform Podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I am Augusto Pinaud.
And I'm Art Gelwicks.
It's good that you remember your name because today we're going to be talking about email overload and Outlook. So
Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. It's tough at times.
it's tough at times. So today we're going to talk about Outlook and an email overload, but we are trying to concentrate into the problem and the solutions available. The good thing with Outlook is it is available, I think, in any platform that you can think of. The bad thing with being available on any platform is that Outlook is not exactly cross platform. It works on every platform, but every platform in the Microsoft style has different features, different capabilities, and so far, so on. And and even different issues and different things that do very, very well. But that's a little bit of what we are going to be trying to cover here and what happened when we talk and when people deal with this issue, especially when you are confined to Outlook. There is people who have the ability to say, okay, fine, I will check my email in my devices in Outlook, or I will leave Outlook to the PC and use something different from my mobile device or my tablets. And there is organizations where simply your option is Outlook or Outlook. So that's an issue. And the second issue is email overload. And, I remember, God knows how many years, at least more than 10, when David Allen used to complain, people used to go to David Allen and complain about email. And he said, if you're complaining right now about 50 emails, wait, because that horse is out of the barn and there's nothing that is going to stop him. And I think if you pick a human right now who have only 40 emails, you will see a person with a smile consistently because I don't know anybody who just receive 40 emails.
Yeah, email is one of those things that it's a necessary evil. It has been for a long time. There's so many email accounts that most people have. I mean, I don't know of very many people who don't have at least two email accounts, if not more. I have way more than I probably should have. And email overload is absolutely a problem. I mean, I know people who have declared email bankruptcy at times and literally just gone through and said, look, I'm just going to delete them all and we'll start from scratch. That is certainly one way to handle it. It's not one way that I care to handle it. But Outlook framing this conversation up, and we'll talk about other types of email overload with other applications in future episodes. But today we're going to focus on Outlook because that's probably the most common client that people have to work with, especially in a business or professional environment. Uh, Outlook is one of those things that a lot of people have gone through their careers subjected to, if there's no better way to say it. As you framed it earlier, you have Outlook as your email client. That's it. That's
Right.
what you're told. That's what you're set up, and that's what you're doing. So there are ways within the tool, whether you're using it on mobile, whether you're using it on the web, whether you're using it on desktop, there are features that seem to be ubiquitous across all the different variants that you can put to use to help you manage some of this email overload that we've got. It doesn't, it won't prevent you from the fire hose of emails that you have coming in, but it at least will allow you to juggle and manage them. And unfortunately, some of the features can also introduce their own problems, and that's a couple of the things I wanted to dig into today as well as how you can create your own issues. Uh, what I thought we'd do today is dig into really five main things, which is one, how Outlook can help you handle incoming email, how it can help you track outgoing email, how you can manage your retained email, the stuff that you actually have to keep rather
Mhm.
than just deleting. Automation capabilities, and we've talked about this in the past, but there are some built-in automation capabilities that you can leverage within Outlook, and I want to see if we're using them and how we use them. And finally, any tips or tricks that we know of that could be helpful. I'm going to focus on Outlook desktop for Windows and Outlook on the web in my observations today. Augusto, I assume
I
you're
will
going to be
focus
looking at
mostly on Windows and iOS. Those are really the two platforms where I deal with Outlook mostly.
perfect. I mean, this is the type of thing where I'll start off right now. If you are using Outlook and you're using Microsoft 365, specifically if you're using Microsoft 365, I suggest you start to get comfortable with Outlook on the web because Microsoft is moving more and more structurally
Mhm.
to utilizing Outlook on their web as their primary email client. I would not be surprised if over the next few years we see more and more effort by Microsoft to phase out the desktop level client. I don't think it'll ever go away, but I think they're going to put more and more effort onto the web client just because it actually makes more sense. It's easier to modify, it's easier to deploy, it's easier to maintain. There's less legacy nonsense, all that happy stuff. So let's stick to our listing though. Incoming emails. First, where do all your emails go when they come in?
So I may need to go into what I use. Email in Outlook for me lives for a couple of clients. That's all. It's a couple of clients where I have email accounts for the organization and they get there. So they go to the inbox, and because I am not working for this organization, I do a couple of specific things. I don't get that many emails, so I can keep the notifications. I'm in that beautiful place with those email addresses where I receive less than 40 emails a day. Okay, it is beautiful, but that's not my main inbox. My main inbox, if I put it in Outlook, will go crazy. That said, for me, there is certain things that goes into that professional um, calendars all sync into that because I want to be able to see when I open the calendar everything. And this calendar in particular can only be seen in Outlook, so I cannot connect it just to my iOS um, calendar. So because of that, I use Outlook a lot more than what I will probably use it in, again, in iOS. My main device is an iPad. I have for this particular client a PC, and I connect to their PC when needed. And this is where Outlook gets frustrating for me. I can do things in that PC that I should be able, power wise, to be able to do in the iPad that is still you are not able to. And it makes no sense. It's a matter of making the code. It's the same complaint I have on OneNote. It's not OneNote. OneNote is great, but I need that uniformity. I like that uniformity.
Mhm.
I don't like to think, oh, I need to search an email. Okay, I need to go to the PC because that's where it's powerful enough to do it. Oh, I want to create folders. Well, that's messy on the iOS. Let me go to the PC again. Okay, I want to sync notes. There is no notes. So if there is notes that I keep, okay, that I want to keep in Outlook, then again, I need to go. Yes, if your organization have them open, you can see those notes on the notes on iOS. But if you work with organizations where their IT is very close, you can't. Then there are no way. There is nothing on that app that will allow me to see notes. So all those reference that I have turn useless. Yes, I have workarounds, but it should be really nice to have one app that allows me to solve the problem. That said,
Yeah.
um, I always, when we talk to clients about email overload, there are two questions that I ask. One is, what is your primary device? Okay, what is the device that you use the most? And in my experience, to most of the executive I work with, it is their phone, not their tablet, not their PC. And based on that, I work with people to set up not their computer. their mobile phone. And then everything should follow that mobile phone. Okay. In my case, as I described my use of Outlook, it goes first into the iPad. So that is the main device. That is the device that I carry with me anywhere. So my Outlook use is defined with the iPad in mind as the first device, and other devices, the PC or the phone, need to follow what make my life easier on the iPad. And I get it, that may not be that common. Most people follow what works in the PC, even that the main device for them may be their phone or a tablet.
Yeah, that's part of the dilemma that I have, and part of the dilemma comes from the fact that I have 4 primary email accounts that I'm dealing with on a daily basis, just because structurally that's how I operate. Uh, because of that, I could either A, route those emails all into one account, which has its own limitations for things like replying to emails, or B, I can access them separately from one place. That's where Outlook for to do or Outlook on the desktop works really well. I can attach to multiple accounts, I can pull them in, and I do get benefits like the calendars and things. I can see them in a common place. The tool itself is good for that. It comes close to being really good if it would be able to take, for example, all the inboxes and put them together and be able to
Mhm.
display them together. Outlook on mobile can do that. When I have all of my accounts on Outlook on mobile, I can see them all in one place. I can swipe through and clean up all my mailboxes in one shot on mobile, but I can't do that on desktop. So again, you're right. This is one of the challenges that we have with a cross-platform application that's been around for a while is feature drift,
Mhm.
where you get functionality on one, but you don't get it on the other, or the implementations are different from one to the other. So when I look at this incoming flood of email, I have 4 different fire hoses that I have stuff coming in. And in some cases, I have people who send me information, same contact, to 2 different email addresses, just because that's the one they grabbed in their system at that time. So then I have no way to unify that on the back end easily. I now have to move things and drag things around from here to there. So setting up structures to be able to, I want to say, pre-qualify that incoming email is really important, because I don't want to have to read every subject line and every, from line to figure out where did the email come from and do I need to do anything with it.
Mhm.
That ties into one of the features that's nice within Outlook, which is the idea of conditional formatting. Outlook on the desktop, you can go in and apply a conditional formatting criteria and say, okay, if it's coming from such and such a person or such and such an address, or it contains such and such words in it, do this to it.
Correct.
Change the font, highlight it in some way. That's really useful, because then the system is automatically pre-visualizing this content, and you can see just at a glance, bang, bang, bang. Okay, these are ones that I need to address, because these I have decided in advance. This is my rule structure. So I like that capability within Outlook on the desktop. You can do similar when you get to Outlook on the web, but not exactly the same to the same depth. It doesn't have that same level of power. Um, So handling incoming email is really a matter of configuring the system to pre-read it. Now, and we'll talk about automation later, but this is one of those landmines that I have found a lot. When you use rules with Outlook, and Outlook's ability to create a rule in the system to read, to do basically what I described with the conditional formatting, but it's just a little bit more complicated. One of the capabilities you have is to have an email move to another folder.
Right.
So if it comes in, it hits the inbox, the rule reads it, says, oh, this is from such and such, and move over to that other folder, and it does it. And that's great and wonderful. I have lost mail that way. Now, when I say lost, I don't mean it going away. I mean it just missed me and went
Right.
right to that folder as a new email. So then I have to go back and look at all the time my listing of email folders to see, is there anything in the folders that's marked as new? That's
So
problematic.
that is an interesting problem. I also have a couple of reports that I get that I don't necessarily, they're not necessarily critical. So I can look at any time that they tend to file that way directly into Outlook. Okay. As soon as they hit the inbox, they should move to that folder and I will review them. I know it's something I need to do, but it's not critical. That said, I one of the things that I advise to people who have a high volume of email is what you keep on the inbox. Okay.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I show how to do is to create those conditionals. When the email has more than X amount of days, move it to this folder. And now it goes directly to a backlog. Read it or unread it. That's a way to keep using the desktop your mobile live, something that you can. You are not deleting emails, you're moving it to that. And when you get the time, you can go back to that backlog folder and clean it, but allows you to just keep on that inbox, the last 24 hours of or 36 hours of email. I don't tend to recommend more than 36 hours of email. But again, I tend to work with people where that mobile device, it's their main device. It's where they spend most of the time. And having 1,000 emails, okay, that they know they need to read instead of creating peace, what produce in my experience is stress. So that is one thing also in the email overload. If you look right now at your inbox, desktop or mobile, and you see you have 1,000 emails. Okay, not unheard of. 1,000 unread, by the way. Okay, because normally what is marking you is what is unread, and that is not unheard of. Then figure it out. What can you do to make your experience better? Okay. The other thing I advise to people is triage. Okay. And keep the folders on the top where there are emails that they're FYI. Okay. And as soon as you receive
Mhm.
it, you can move it to that folder. It's an FYI. I don't need to read it. If I get an email from Art right now that says, that I'm copy, I know it's an FYI. I can move it directly to a folder FYI. And as my day progress or the week progress, then I can go back to that email and decide where are you going to get that piece of email. Because if you don't define email, if you don't define those rules, and Outlook is very good at that, that's one of the skills. And if you have the desktop companion, you can leave that desktop open and let them do all the filtering, and then you work in the mobile version now very, very effectively. But those rules and those conditions to make that management easy need to be very conscious. So I tend to tell people create an FYI folder. Okay. Create, you can get any email that you are copied. If you're CC or BCC on that email, most likely that's an FYI. Okay. So if you open the email and say CC Augusto, automatically goes to that. That's a way to move email out of the inbox because you cannot get 1,000 unread emails and really open that thing and say, oh, yes, I'm going to process this thing. It's impossible. Okay. What you
Mhm.
get, you and everybody else, is a feeling of overwhelm. So, and when you leave for the night and come the next morning and that thing has 1,000 unread emails, you're already starting the day losing. That's the reason of that rule. Move them to this folder. Okay. Backlog. Now you are not deleting, you know where you are, but you can start the day with some hope, with some ability to clean that thing. But those rules to win or to beat that game of overwhelm need to happen consciously and outside of Outlook. You need to think really, what are the things that I need to do? What are the kind of emails that I get that I need to respond, that are urgent, okay, and what are the ones that is fine, okay, and base it on that. Take the time. And Outlook has, again, this great thing that is the desktop companion. If you have that, set up the rules in the desktop, let that thing connected. Okay. Anyways, if you're in a laptop and your mobile device is your main device, that laptop most likely is connected. Leave it connected. Okay. And let the filtering capabilities on the desktop do that heavy work for you. And what you get is your email process on mobile. It is, if you think it in this way, it's like having a virtual assistant, okay, who pre-process your email, and what you get is the result of that pre-processed email. What requires is that you look at that email with enough attention to be able to know and think what are the rules that you need.
You touched on an interesting point that people need to take into consideration, and we're kind of getting into the automation piece early, but we need to. Uh, if you're using Outlook Desktop and you have created rules on Outlook Desktop, depending on the mail server that you have connected to, they may not process unless Outlook is open. That can be problematic because you're counting on things to be moving where they're supposed to be moving. And they're not doing that if you're off using your mobile device, unless you're doing exactly what you just said, leaving Outlook running all the time. Now, and this is something, honestly, I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to look into and see if you create rules within Outlook on the web, do those remain active all the time? Honestly, I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to look and see. I would speculate that they should, but I don't know. And again, this
I
is where
have
you
no
get
clue.
deeper into the yeah. You get deeper into the automation piece because you can utilize tools like Power Automate to actually really hardcore process your email. Um,
Mhm.
but that's really building a lot of stuff by hand. So if I look here, excuse me, and I'm going to pull up
But
Outlook right now just for the sake of doing it.
right. And it is important, if you have that feeling of overwhelm, and hey, let's be honest, most people have it. The problem with email is not the amount of email you're receiving, is that you have not spent the time trying to help yourself, and how to automate and how to define what are the rules to check an email. If you think at this day and age that you're going to be open your email and process email as you did it 10 years ago, forget about it.
Mhm.
It's never going to happen. You're never, ever going to reach that proverbial inbox zero. It's impossible. The rules, and when we talk about Apple Mail, I will complain heavily about that. Okay. Because the rules really are the key to process the volume of email that most people have. And if you don't know, or you have not yet learned how to do these rules, then most likely you are overwhelmed into the amount of email that you have.
So just to follow up this rules discussion, within Outlook on the web, you have rules and you have a function called sweep. The rules capability appears to run all the time. And interestingly enough, there are certain rules that you can create on the desktop that when I look at them on the web is telling me you can't edit or view this rule on the web. So apparently you created it on your desktop and you're now stuck with that set of criteria. So again, this is that feature divergence that we get into with these cross-platform level applications. Sweep, on the other hand, is a different type of application or different type of rule because sweep runs periodically. It's not constantly checking everything. But for example, I have one in here that goes through and does a sweep um, at regular intervals to look for any LinkedIn notifications that are sitting in the inbox older than 10 days. It goes through and deletes them, it just
Okay.
purges them out because I don't need them anymore. That type of a sweep house cleaning is a very useful capability. I like that function, but it's not really a rule as per se because it's not handled When something triggers, it's actually done on a schedule. And that's where we need to think about some of the difference. But the fact that you have some rules that you can create at the desktop level and then can't fix them or modify them anyplace else but at the desktop level means that you have to kind of decide where's your primary place going to be to interact and work with these. Uh, the same thing applies, though, when you think about these rules. And if you have multiple accounts, the rules can vary based on the account. So, for example, I have a rule, or I have an account tied into where I have my Google Mail account set up. Like, oh, okay, that's great. I can go through and set up rules for my Outlook desktop client to handle my Gmail account, but it will only handle those while that Outlook client is open because they're not Gmail rules.
Hmm.
You can set up Gmail
Correct.
rules too. So, and they would get to the email first before Outlook would. So that
Before
set of rules
Outlook
would
can look at
process.
them.
So
And,
yeah,
and
so
we will cover
you
we
can
will cover in
see.
another email overload on Gmail,
Oh
as
yeah.
well as I will complain about the Apple. But you bring a great point that is an additional complexity. If you
Hmm.
use your Gmail on Outlook, now you have different place for where these rules can apply, and that was the reason. Part of the reason say you need to think this through, and as I said previously on the show, this thinking need to happen in writing. These are the 27 rules I create, and this is why I create them, and this is
Hmm.
what I'm trying to accomplish. Because otherwise, you are just creating rules, and eventually, what you have is the closest thing to a Frankenstein.
Yeah, it's really, it can be overwhelming very quickly. And there are functions that are built into the system that try to mitigate some of that. For example, there are views within Outlook that's like a focused inbox view where you can say, okay, show me things only the unread first, and then show me, everything that's been read after that. And that's fine. And if it's useful to you, great. Conversation view is another one that a lot of people like, especially it's gotten a lot better. Conversation
Mhm.
view takes a threaded view to not only the email you receive, but the responses you send back. So it attaches them all together, not only as a thread, but conversation view will reach across your folders and say, taking this top one, if you have taken other messages that have spun off of this and moved them to a folder, it'll pull them back into that conversation and allow you to see that as a continuous discussion. That's great unless somebody tinkers with the email, unless they change the subject line or something like that. And sometimes things can fall off by the wayside. Um, so that can be a bit of a hangup, but just handling that inflow, you're absolutely right. Taking time to create those structures, looking in there. My recommendation is if you're going to do that, if you're going to try and tackle it, you need to go through and start creating some filters for yourself and say, okay, only show me everything of this type of email. Like, open one up and then say, find, do a lookup and find the rest of this email. How many are you actually dealing with? What have you done with that email in the past? And what has been the consistent behavior? And then decide, do I want the system to do that behavior for me? In Outlook itself, it's a nice little feature. If you take any email that you've received, at least on the desktop, on the version I have, and you right click on it, there's an option called Find Messages from Sender. And
Mhm.
it'll immediately find all the email that has come from that from address. That's really useful because then you can go through and say, oh, okay, based on this one, I now want to spin up a rule. And that rule is going to do the following. So that can be very useful, to get that inbox down to that.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of
On
inbox zero.
oh,
I don't believe in inbox zero. I don't think it's necessary. I think it creates more stress than is value. But Ray
well,
and other powers that be will argue that. So,
but let's define what it is inbox zero. Okay. For me, inbox zero has nothing to do with the number of emails that you have on that inbox. I don't care if your comfort zone is 10. Okay. You know what? I had a client who he leave whatever he considers is critical, okay, for him to
Mhm.
respond on inbox because his way thing is when he goes to bed, he wants that inbox clean. Okay. Clean. That means everything else is processed and he knows, okay, there are FYI, things that I need to respond later, things that I need to think, things that I can delete. Perfect. But you
Okay.
know what it is. What's then that's what I mean about inbox zero. Inbox zero doesn't matter how many emails you have in inbox. The question for me is how many minds do you have in inbox? Okay. And you should try to minimize those minds to zero because the last thing you want is wake up the next morning and your boss, or somebody else, texting you or sending you on Teams or whatever and telling you, hey, I sent you an email 3 days ago. We need the answer by 9 a.m. And now you are in trouble. That's what I mean with inbox zero. I don't care where the email is. What is important is nothing on that thing will caught on fire, you know. And when you talk about um, the contact on iOS, if you click on that email address, okay, it will take you to the contact and it will allow you to see, okay, show me emails from this person, show me events, even show me files that this person has shared. Okay,
Mhm.
that works beautifully in the mobile. But again, it is how you have all this set up.
And thinking about this, and let's take it to the next step now because we've kind of beaten the horse on the incoming. When we reply and all of the responses and all the stuff that we send back, how do you keep track of, like, say, responses that you go out, action items that you've got to do? How do you handle your side of the email equation?
So let me answer that question in two parts. What I do is I blind carbon copy Todoist. Okay. And yes, that means I need to double process many of those emails and they need to go and I need to process in Todoist. I understand that. That's a decision, poor decision or not, that I made years ago. What I tend to advise to clients is if you need a response, blind carbon copy yourself and then create a rule that says waiting for. The problem with that is that it still comes to email and you still need to be responsible to process that. I in Outlook that doesn't work as far as I know, at least in the mobile. Okay, you can use the flagging on the desktop. Okay, and say remind about this in 3 days, and that works very well. And now you're making me wonder if I can do that same thing on the if I flag. Yeah, I can flag it, but I cannot define if this email I need to be a reminder, at least on the web. I can flag the whole email and then that will bring me a couple of things, but it will not allow me to say, okay, since you flag me this and then uh remind me in a couple of days. That only happened, as far as I know, on the desktop. That is very useful if you use a desktop, if that is your
So,
main machine.
just for the sake of trying it, let's see. I'm going to say Control Shift 1. Okay. So, there is a function within Outlook on the desktop, and it's also on the web, and they're called quick steps. And quick steps allow you to program a sequence of events to occur by triggering an action. I've gone through now, just in our conversation here. Uh, yeah, okay. So you're talking about forwarding something to Todoist. You can set up a quick step to say whatever email you're looking at, when I hit this quick step, do the following. In this case, it's going to do a forward to an email address that's tied to a Todoist project. In this case, one that I just created called Outlook Inbox or
Okay.
Outlook Follow Up or something like that. But anyway, by doing that, all I have to do now is click on forward to and then hit send, and it's gone. That then winds up over in Todoist in that should let's see if it does. Yep, there we go. It winds up in that box. It's not in my Todoist inbox, it's in a Todoist project. But
Mhm.
now I've grabbed that thing and said, get over there. I could do, I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. I sound like a little train. Uh, and this
You
may be
can.
where you
And
have to. Oh, yes, you can. Okay. So with a quick step, you can do multiple steps. So I could do a second step that says, this has been forwarded to Todoist. Get it out of my inbox now. Go file it somewhere. So that means I could create quick steps for, let's say, a client. This is a client follow up item. So send this email to that follow up project over in Todoist and then move the email to their folder so that I can maintain it. This is, again, this is getting into the automation, but this is going to help me manage that activity level. Now, let's say, for example, though, I'm not using an external application to track my things to do, which a lot of people don't. You can use the flag capability in Outlook to do the same thing uh, to multiple degrees, actually. Being able to flag an item for follow up, you can literally, if you select it, you can say, do it for today, tomorrow, this week, next week, choose a custom date.
on
You
desktop.
can add a reminder to it. You can put it to do or mark it as complete. They're nice features. It's nice follow up capability. Here's some additional integration, though, that comes into the play. If you do that, tools like Microsoft To Do, because it's tied in the back end, if you're using Microsoft 365, will show you every flagged email. It shows you as a to do item and it passes the information back and forth. So it's a nice capability. You don't have to use an outside tracking tool if you don't want. You can use the internal, flag it, do your follow up after the fact, and then mark it as complete. It still means you're going to address the issue, but it means it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. So I really recommend that people do this. I've seen a lot of people build these massive folder structures and move things from folder to folder to get God help you, bless you. I think it's fantastic. I have no idea how you manage that monstrosity. But for some people it works and more power to you. I like the ability of having the system go through and try to manage some of that for me and also provide me the follow-ups to be able to say, show me everything that's due to today or tomorrow or next week. Um, Now that does kind of break a rule. I know a lot of productivity systems will say, don't use your inbox as a to-do list. Uh, and I know a lot of people who do. I know people who will send themselves emails to remember to do things,
Correct.
which is
And
which is a way to do it. I've never really wanted to increase my mail level that much, but
I don't want to increase my mail level either, but again, it goes to what we were saying at the beginning of the show. What works for you? Because one of the things, with cross platforms is that is the reason if you just need a PC, okay, I don't need the phone and don't have the phone, so then you don't have cross platform. You buy a PC and move with that thing all around. The reality is that most people have multiple devices because they do certain things well and certain things better than the other devices. So what works for you, and learn to play on it. When I published with Michael Solinsky in 2013, iPad only, I remember people saying, it's insane. Who wants to make their main machine the iPad? Well, 10 years later, this thing continued being my main machine, except that now, in
Mhm.
comparison, is ridiculously more powerful. But why? Well, because for what I did, it was perfect. It accomplished everything that I needed to do at the time. So if you manage your inbox and you send and everything is managed through email for you, who cares? That works for
Mhm.
you, great. What is important is that works for you. I remember, when talking about that, there was an interview David Allen did, was the name of the guy is escaping me, who he built his system, his whole productivity system on Salesforce. Okay, because he was traveling and he didn't want to carry devices, so he wanted to get to some place and found a browser. And this is again 10 years back, and he built it on Salesforce. And I remember listening to this interview and thinking, I will never want to spend that much time in Salesforce. Okay. But for this
Okay.
person, it works very, very well. So I one of the things I agree with the productivity and the productivity experts is we sometimes set things that take too little. Okay. Do I recommend anybody to leave in email? No. But I work with people who do. Okay. I work with people who their device is that phone. Okay. And if doesn't work or cannot be done on the phone, doesn't matter how good is your tip, because that is the only thing that this person will carry back and forward and have with him or her. So it is important, doesn't matter the topic, but in this case, talking about email overload and Outlook, we are defining two things. One is what works for you. Do you live in
Hmm.
email? Great. Then you need to take the time to understand how you can make that living better. And as I said at the beginning, from my perspective, what is the main device? And then as soon as you define this is my main device, then make everything follow that device, not the other way around. Because again, what I found as a coach is that people define on Outlook. Well, I've been using this Outlook thing for the last 20 years, so that's how I define it. Great. But now that's not the main device. So let's work into redefining so you can get out of that email overload, because in many cases, it's not about the volume. In most cases, it's not about the volume, even on insane volumes. It's about not having basic skills and basic tricks to manage that volume.
And just to touch on one other thing, the features that you want to use may determine what your primary tool becomes. You may not have a lot of choice in the matter. And I'll go back to this idea of quick steps within Outlook. This is a good example of it because I can create quick steps at the desktop level. It's great. They work fine. It doesn't transport up to the cloud.
Anywhere.
They run separate. Um, but I can create quick steps in the cloud. So, but I don't think they transport downhill either. So the challenge then becomes, where am I going to use this? Where's the primary usage case? So you may find yourself having to use a specific tool, specific piece of your platform, because that's the only place the feature set is, especially with Outlook, the only place that particular feature is available. I mean, if everything we were doing was just, let's say, browser based, well then fine, it wouldn't freaking matter. You just go wherever you needed to go and use it. And if you're
Right.
using the browser client, that's also the case. But if you're using something that is desktop and native application specific, and I say desktop, but I also talk about it on the mobile side too. You know, if there's a mobile feature like sharing that you can't get on the desktop level, then guess what? You're going to have to get comfortable with using that other device for that primary functionality all the time. Um, I have it's a procedural thing, but part of the maintenance, and this lends us into the third step or third section in our conversation today, and that's maintaining retained email. How do you organize and keep your note or your email files clean and happy? Um, that's one of the times I do lean on my mobile devices. I will sit down with my tablet and go through and things that need to be archived because I can just single swipe across them with my pen and boom, it goes right into the archive. Yeah, I can do similar on desktop, similar on the web, but that motion and action and when I choose to do it is much more convenient on the mobile side. I'll sit down with my coffee in the morning, part of my morning planning. I'll go through and say, okay, don't need any of this email from yesterday, and then move on. And that gives me that sense of having some momentum moving forward into the day. So looking at all the email that you keep, and I'm not going to ask you how many emails you have because it's nobody's business but you. Plus, I am totally embarrassed by the number I have. Uh, how do you organize? Hey, I'm not shy. I got more email
No,
than
no,
I
no.
know
I'm
possibly,
more email.
and I
I
have
receive more email than I care to admit to.
the one thing I haven't done, and I should I should just check. I wonder if there's a way to find out what the oldest email I have is. I have to look. It would probably be in Gmail of the accounts I have, the oldest retained email. But that's neither here nor there. It's an interesting experiment. If anybody's bored, go look and find out how old your email is. That said, how do you organize your email folders?
So I have there are two set of folders. Okay, the top set of folders is things that I still need to respond. Okay, they are not being archived yet. So I have a folder called to review, a folder called FYI, and a folder called long responses. Okay, why? Because there are moments I have emails that I need to think to respond. Okay, everything else I try to process. If there is a project that I'm working that I know is going to contain X number of emails, that gets their own folder inside of an archive folder. So I dump everything into archive that is not going to be deleted. And when there are projects, I create a subfolder. And when the project is done, I just select all the emails and move them back to archive. That's my strategy. It's very simple. There's 5, 6 folders. And part of the reason is that I don't need any more complexity than that. I want to be able to do it in the iPad. And, there are moments where I need to go to the desktop to search email because the search capability on the desktop tend to be better. Has happened. But in general, this setup is more than enough for my day to day on the go. What is yours?
You would have to ask me that. Um,
Of course.
mine's a a little bit more topically structured. Uh, taking personal out of the equation, talking only professionally. I will gravitate towards creating a folder at the top level for a client,
Hmm.
and then I create subfolders in there for various topic areas for that particular client. Drilling in, not so much threaded. I'm not interested in the thread, but for example, Office 365 support. Great. I have a folder for each client. All the work I do related to that is buried in that folder somewhere. Uh, I don't typically use those folders as reference. I use those folders for two purposes. One, to find something when I can't find it anyplace else, and I swear it exists, but it's not in my normal systems, and I don't know how it not got there, or it got not
Right.
there, or it's not where it should be. Um, the second one, though, is to be able to go back and pull out an email and say, "No, you sent this to me, and here's what it said." So it's CYA type of folders. Anything I want to retain with Outlook that I need for actual reference. Let's say somebody sent me reference information, model numbers, part request, something like that. I use a function called send to Outlook inside or send to OneNote inside of Outlook. And I will send that email to OneNote for a couple reasons. One, it's much easier to organize, I think, in the long run because it is then a OneNote note. It is fully searchable. It is available on all my devices, and I can
Hmm.
organize it within other notebook structures. I'm not playing within the inbox folder structure. Secondarily, though, I have found that forwarding emails to other systems can sometimes be temperamental. I can't always guarantee that all the information that I need, especially with heavily formatted emails, is going to be able to go over there. Uh, I don't do everything off of email. I get a lot of inputs from various different sources. Actually, I get a surprising amount through text. and through social media inputs and things like that. So the inbox and Outlook itself is actually not the center of my world. It just happens to be a really big fire hose hooked to the entire manifold. Uh, but not everything goes there. So I'll have stuff coming in through other channels that if I wanted to maintain it or track it within OneNote or Outlook, I would have to add it to Outlook
Right.
because it's not natively there. Now, there are features that are starting to become interesting within Outlook, especially at the web level, that aren't really available, excuse me, at the desktop level yet, such as the ability to add notes within the web level. I can go in and I can create notes in the system. Tap the add a note button. Where's the add a note button? Note. Yes, there it is. And I can create notes on a page very similar to what you have like a Google Keep, which is
Correct.
kind of neat. You can actually go through and create in the calendar view almost a dashboard style view. So you have an input where, and this is only on the web, not on the desktop, but you can see your calendar listing, you can see your inbox, you can see your notes, you can create this dashboard style interface now on the web, which is not bad. Again, you're kind of limiting yourself to just what you can do on the web itself,
And
but
that is fine. And
it's
that
not
is fine. If
terrible.
you're connected most of the time, doesn't matter. But you need to be very clear if that is real for you. The problem is if you tell me I'm going to be on the web, but I'm mobile and I don't have data when I move in this computer, well, then you're going to have an issue.
Yes. And this is absolutely one of the biggest challenges I've seen with Outlook is Outlook is one of those things that you can set up to work with offline. It has the capability to cache your mail to your local drive and work completely offline. And then when you connect, send and receive your emails and pull down your new ones. And it works. I have had as many issues with it as I have had successes. But it is a capability. And this is something to take into consideration across when we talk cross-platform functionality. This is something to take into consideration with whatever app you're using is
Mhm.
if you think you're going to be in situations where you need to work in an offline mode, you need to consider applications that can do just that. Uh, Talking about other tools like Notion and that sort, they don't offer an offline mode. You're either connected or you're not. You have no access. So if you're in a situation where you think, okay, I'm going to work on this on the airplane, or I'm going to work on this, in a suspect connection area, which is surprisingly more areas than people would think, uh,
Correct.
you need to be able to say, okay, I can have this function.
My daughter swims competitively, and for whatever reason those pools are designed so they're like a Faraday cage. Okay, you get no signal in and out. Doesn't matter if you have anything. There is nothing coming in and out of those pools, so you
Mhm.
need software that can get there and work.
And this is one of the things that when you look at, again, native apps, especially a mobile, a native app that is basically a web app, just interfacing with its data connection, pulling stuff down and back and forth, that doesn't really get you anywhere. But
Mhm.
being able to go into Outlook on let's say Android or on iOS and to go into, and this is the test, any app, not just these that we're talking about, put yourself in airplane mode and then open the app. If you can do that, if you can put it in airline mode and it doesn't come back and say, "Oh, I don't know what you want to do," that means you've got offline capability and
Correct.
you will be able to continue to work effectively. Um, Personally, I think the mobile applications are getting better and better
They are.
very quickly, and the web applications are getting better and better. The desktop, it's got a it's got a strong power base, but I'm not seeing it grow the way you see the other applications in speed and experience and integration. So if I had to point somebody in a direction, and this is one of the things that's nice that, and again, Outlook being a Microsoft product, 365 kind of makes it part and parcel. Um, you can get 365 dirt cheap now. I mean, it's literally, well, you can get Outlook for free. You go to outlook.com, you can just sign up for an
Correct. And get a
outlook.com
free.
email address, and get access to the basic application. But even if you pay for a family version, you pay for an essential business license, or a low tier business license, you can get all that functionality on the web and use that capability. You only have to get up to, I forget the name of the license, but it's like $5 or $6 a month,
Right.
to be able to download the application to your machine to have it working on your local machine. But I would say for the most part, most people don't even need the desktop version anymore. I mean, there aren't too many things that it does aside from that offline capability, um, that it's really critical to have that on your desktop itself. Now, looking at, and I'm just glancing here to see, customizing actions. Again, there's some really nice capabilities within here. Um, yeah, there's nothing in here that would preclude me from using this as my primary email client and when I talk about this, I mean Outlook on the web. Um,
Correct.
Outlook desktop, sure, but it's kind of overkill at times, I think.
Well,
So go ahead.
let me ask you this: what if you were going to give one advice to a person who says you need to use Outlook and he's suffering right now from email overload? What will be that advice or that trick?
Okay, so if you're dealing with a massive flood of email coming in through Outlook, there are two things that I suggest you get familiar with. Take a little time, look at the help system, learn how to use them. One are rules. Look at the rules capability. Go in there and start to play with the rules and get comfortable with them. It's not a hard step to take. You can go and you can right click on any email that you receive. You can go into that quick menu and you can say, create a rule. You can look under rules and you can start off right up with, always move messages from whoever this sender is.
Mhm.
And just that basic rule can go a long way to handling that volume. The best candidate to play with that would be looking at your inbox, look at all those sale notifications or promotional notifications or anything like that. Um, I will often tell people that the best time of year to do this one singular exercise, if you can wait, is the month before your birthday, because that entire month before your birthday, you get nothing but promotional nonsense. Hey, it's your birthday. Here's a coupon. Okay, these are all perfect candidates for something to either be identified as spam, junk, or set up a rule to move it someplace to look at later. Just the exercise of doing that, setting up those rules and allowing them to process within a couple days, when you start to realize that you're not coming into 80 new emails, but 40, but 30, but 10, all of a sudden that weight starts to lift. It's not that you're not getting them. It's just that you're assigning them proper priority. The second, and this is coupled with the rules, is what I was talking about earlier, the quick steps. The quick steps are intentional actions that you're setting up to choose to take when you need to take them. This takes a little longer to map out, but go through and when you find you are doing the same thing over and over. So, for example, if you get an email and you always have to do something with it and then forward it to someone, creating a quick step that allows you to take that completed email or whatever you've commented and automatically forward it to them, it's worth it because you can tie it to a hotkey. So now, for example, I can create a hotkey, Control Shift 1 on my keyboard, for example, that takes an email and immediately maybe sets a priority, sets a follow-up date for a flag, and moves it to a folder. Bang, 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 done. one keystroke. That's huge because while I'm not a huge GTD fan, there is a lot of precedent to touch the stuff once. If it
Mhm.
comes in, do something with it, move on. If it sits there in your inbox, you're constantly looking at it. You're going and you have to constantly reassess. The reassessment may be immediate, but it's still something that your brain has to do as part of that thing that you've got going on in your environment. So those are the two things that I would say really could be the most useful right off the bat. What do you think?
You
What are yours?
know, those are great. What I will the one that I have is that, as I said a couple of times today on the show, define what is that main device, because I see that mistake over and over and over. The device that I use all the time is my phone, but everything is set up to be in the computer. That's very, very, very key. And I will agree with you. I will concur in the rules. You know, but not to use the rule. I will tell you, create that email folder and then start moving all email there. You're not saying it's called backlog, okay? You know you need to go through that thing eventually, but remove it out of the inbox. Sorry, your email 1000, okay? You are not looking at that thing. That email of 3 months ago, you are not looking at that thing. You don't need to go on the extreme of do it every day, but at least once a week, at the end of the week, move it to the backlog. That way it's not clogging, okay, and clogging your inbox.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing that I would suggest, and it just occurred to me now, make sure you check your junk mail every so often. One of the things that I have found, especially if you're running like 365, uh, is that the junk mail rules are good, but sometimes they can be a little over aggressive. And giving yourself the opportunity to educate Outlook on what you think junk mail is versus not junk mail is really important. So cracking open that spam folder, cracking open that junk mail folder every so often, just doing a quick look through and say, oh, you shouldn't be in there. If you find something in there that is not junk, you can go in, right click on it, go down to where it says junk, and then select not junk and educate Outlook to say, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't be throwing this stuff out. And don't be afraid to put other stuff into the junk category. I mean, junk mail is just that. Think about it like you have the regular when the mailman shows up at the door. How much of the stuff that's in that mailbox goes right in the trash can? I mean, I know the U.S. Postal Service offers a service called Informed Delivery, where they will pre-scan your email. Great service when it works and when they actually do it. But I wish version 2.0 would show me that scan and allow me to check which ones to just put right in the trash can. Don't deliver these things. That would be great. That would be wonderful. Now, they would probably mess that up too, but that's
Hey,
neither here nor there.
you know,
That
it is what it is.
ability, yeah, that ability
But
is
well,
big.
for now, follow us where you like to listen to podcasts, like us, or subscribe to us and leave us a review. You can also interact with us in PersonalProductivity.club. We are Augusto Pinaud and Art Gelwicks. See you next time from your favorite device.